We're going to speak now to the Minister for Illegal Migration, that is Michael Tomlinson. Good morning to you. The morning after, the night before. How much of a shock was this rebellion for the Prime Minister last night? Because it wasn't insignificant in terms of numbers, was it?
We had a very robust debate. What happened yesterday was we had committee stage, we had 6 hours of debate on the floor of the House of Commons, and then we had a series of votes, and we had amendments that were tabled on all sides of the House, actually. But when you look down at it, and when you look at the detail and what my colleagues were saying, they all, to a man and to a woman, want this policy to work. Almost every single speech started with, "We want this policy to work." And that's the determination that we have. Yes, there are differences, yes, there are shades, but if there is an inch between us on the Conservative benches, there's a mile between us and the Labour Party, because the Labour Party can't even tell you what their plan is. They don't have a plan to tackle illegal migration. The Prime Minister does, and he's determined to stop the boats, and will do that with this bill.
Michael, I just wonder, do you look at the situation in Ireland and you look at the unrest there and think there is a lesson for the UK to learn about how people are integrated into a country?
In terms of unrest, what I say is that there's actually a moral case. There is a compassionate case for the policy that I've introduced in the House of Commons and that we're pursuing with this Rwanda scheme. We've seen the tragedies of lives lost from people crossing the channel in the small boats just this weekend, the third successive month where there has been fatalities. It is a moral imperative that we tackle this. We've started to do that, and we've seen that with the numbers last year down by a third. We've seen that with our plan in relation to Albania that has had a deterrent effect, that has ensured that those crossing on small boats coming from Albania has reduced by 94%. That is why I'm so determined to tackle this issue of illegal migration, because there is a moral case, there is a compassionate case to make sure that we don't see those tragedies in the Channel.
And yet, despite your determination, here we are in yet another Tory psychodrama. We're talking about the likes of a former Prime Minister rebelling, a friend of the Prime Minister and former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick voting against this yesterday. You say that they were all talking yesterday in the Commons about wanting this legislation to work, but they made it perfectly clear if those amendments did not go through, they could not vote for the bill. If the same numbers rebel tonight, this legislation could fall, and I put it to you, it could be the end of Rishi Sunak.
No, that's not right. We did have the committee stage, and there was a robust debate, as you'd expect, as in fact there always is at committee stage. And you're right, there will be further debate later on this afternoon, and more amendments have been tabled, and I'm sure we'll get onto that in a few moments' time. But actually, if you look back at it, and if you listen to the detail of the debate, everyone stood up saying they want this policy to work. And yes, there are shades, yes, there are nuances, but as I say, we have a plan, we're sticking to that plan, and Labour can't even say what they would do. They were asked time and again. I remember this very vividly in the chamber of the House of Commons when we had the debate before Christmas. Time and again, what is your plan? That was the cry that was ringing out. What is your plan, Labour? And reply came there none. We're going to stick with this plan, and we're going to have another robust debate this afternoon in the chamber of the House of Commons.
Michael, what is your plan to deal with the appeals lawyers? Because they're the people who can mess up a lot of what the way you see things and the way you want things to go.
Well, there are two things there. We're actually going to be debating some of that this afternoon, because there is a clause in the bill that will say it's for ministers to decide. It's not for courts to decide. And you may have heard talk about Rule 39s, about injunctions coming from Strasbourg, from the ECHR, and we're putting it on the face of the bill. We're putting it on the bill in clause 5, actually, of the bill this afternoon, that it's going to be for ministers to decide, not for courts to decide. And that's going to be there on the face of the bill, and we'll have a discussion about that as well. But you're right to say that there has been concern about appeals, and actually that's why the Prime Minister introduced the Illegal Migration Act last year, and it was passed, it had royal assent in the summer of last year, and that does deal with the timelines, that does fast up, make sure that the appeals process is as fast as possible, and also it narrows down the area of challenge and change. And you may have seen this yesterday. We had a debate about how narrow should that be? And you have to bring compelling evidence. That's the test that there will have to be. So listen, there will be detailed debate on this afternoon, but you're absolutely right. We are concerned, and that's why we're making this the toughest piece of illegal migration legislation that's ever been drafted and brought before the House of Commons.
And I come back to my point. I mean, you make the point this morning, Labour haven't got a plan. Nobody's talking about Labour this morning. They're talking about the fact that you've just lost your deputy chair, Lee Anderson. We're talking about the fact that a former Prime Minister, Liz Truss, rebelled last night, and indeed a former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, yesterday, tweeting in favour of these amendments. It feels as though there is a sense of revenge from members of the party, and that it is going to be the disunity within the party that could cost you the election. Certainly that's what the YouGov polling this week has borne out.
Well, you say no one's talking about Labour. That's because they don't have a plan. That's because they can't tell you what they would do.
Nobody's talking about Labour because of the disastrous rebellion in the Commons last night.
Well, let me tell you about that. Actually, the debate yesterday was very respectful. What I heard was friends and colleagues from across the parliamentary party standing up saying that they want this to work. They want to make sure that the legislation will work, and that's why they're having these debates. That's why they are tabling this amendment. And I listened very respectfully to my friends and colleagues right across the parliamentary party. Look, I'm a former deputy chairman of the ERG. I know exactly where my colleagues and friends are coming from. I know their concerns. I know their passion. I know their determination to make sure that this legislation works. Actually, I share that passion. I share that determination. We just have a respectful disagreement as to precisely where that gauge should be. We're going to have more robust debate this afternoon in the chamber. I have absolutely no doubt about it. But if you listen really carefully, and it's not always glamorous, it's not always box office, this is the committee stages, but if you listen carefully, I think you'll hear a respectful and yet a robust exchange this afternoon.
Yeah, it might be very polite, but it's an undermining of the authority of the Prime Minister. Do you think that there could be a vote of no confidence in Rishi Sunak if this bill falls?
No, I don't. I think we've got the parliamentary process that we're going through in the ordinary way. This is what happens. Amendments are tabled, the committee stages happen in the chamber of the House of Commons, and we have robust exchanges. And you're right, they are polite, and that's right, because we are respectful, because I am respectful of all my colleagues, all of whom are determined to tackle the scourge of illegal migration, all of whom are determined to stop the boats and to crack down on the evil criminal gangs, and all of whom are united in that determination, in sharp contrast to Labour, who have no plan.
Michael Tomlinson, very good talking to you. Thank you very much. Michael is the Minister for Illegal Migration.